What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you another one of my 2014 WCQ hat format deck profiles. The deck I wanted to show off today is Hieratic Gishki. It's a really cool combo deck and it's a ton of fun to play. It's not quite the most competitive, but it can definitely steal some games from some of those top decks if you master some of the combos and things, and I figured it was a cool deck to show off. So without further ado, let's get started on this deck profile. So starting off with the ritual monsters, there's only two, and that is one copy of Evagishki Gustkraken and one copy of Evagishki Mine August. Unfortunately, during this time period, these cards are limited, and in terms of ritual monsters, there is another build that will play a couple copies of Gishki Zielgigas on top of these two. I'll discuss that a little bit more later on in the video. Once I actually go through the whole deck profile, I'll explain if you choose to play the two copies of Zielgigas, some of the other cool interactions you can do. But for the most part, the standard build is just playing the two rituals. If you've never seen these before, Evagishki Gustkraken has the effect when it's ritual summoned, you can look at two cards in your opponent's hand and shuffle one of them back into the deck, which you are able to use multiple times if you loop the Gustkrakens. So a lot of times in your combos, you can end up taking anywhere from 2, 3, 4 cards from your opponent's hand, depending on how ideal your hand is and if they have any sort of interruption. And then you have your copy of Evagishki Mine August. When it's ritual summoned, you can target up to 5 cards in the graveyards, so that's yours or your opponent's, and shuffle them back into deck. So that is a really good card to loop your resources, and that's why we are playing both of those. After that, we play 3 copies of Gishki Shadow. This one has the effect that you can discard it to add a Gishki ritual spell from deck to hand, and it also counts as the full material used for a ritual summon. Then we play 2 copies of Gishki Vision. This one's basically the same thing as Shadow, except it adds the ritual monster. I kind of want to bump this down to 1, simply because in this build specifically, I'm only playing the 2 ritual monsters, but you do want to see this, and it works really well with some of the other spell cards that I play that you'll see later on. But in general, I could almost see myself dropping that down to 1. Another reason it could be dropped to 1 is because we play 3 copies of Gishki Abyss. This one on summon, so that can be normal or special summon, will add a Gishki monster with 1,000 defense or less from deck to hand, and so that can add your visions, your shadows, or a handful of other Gishki monsters, so very, very good card as your searcher. To pair with that, 3 copies of Gishki Beast. This one's basically Wolfbark for Gishki monsters, so if you say have one of those copies of Abyss in graveyard and you summon Beast, you're able to summon back the Abyss and get a search, which is really good. You can also summon back things like your other level 4 Gishki monsters and make rank 4s. Just a very good card in general. After that, we play 2 copies of Beautiful Princess. This one, when it's normal or special summoned, you can banish it and summon a level 4 or lower fish monster from your deck, except itself. And so really that's there just to summon your copies of Gishki Abyss, which will then get you a search. A lot of builds will only play 1 of this, but in this build specifically, I think because we aren't going to be playing that much back row, because we're really dedicating a lot of space to the other half of the deck, this card just becomes a lot better into back row, if that makes sense, and also playing things like 1-for-1 so we don't have to use our normal summon to actually get a search is also really powerful, so 2 of this I think is very ideal. Next, we have the Hieratic side of the deck, which is 3 copies of Hieratic Dragon of Tefnuit. If your opponent controls a monster and you don't, you can special summon it. And then if it's tributed, so that includes with the Gishki spell, the ritual spell, it tributes monsters equal to the level of the ritual summon monster to summon, so you will get the secondary effect of this that will summon a normal dragon type monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard, but its attack and defense will be 0. So really good card. We also play 3 copies of Hieratic Dragon of Su. This one can be special summoned by tributing 1 Hieratic monster, which will trigger its effect because it tributes. And then you can tribute a Hieratic monster from your hand or your side of the field to pop a back row that your opponent has, and then it has the same effect when tributed. You can summon a normal dragon monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard, but make its attack 0, so very strong. And the dragon of choice is 2 copies of Labradorite Dragon. The reason we play this is because it is a level 6, and it's also a tuner, which is really important for some of the extra deck cards, and just in general, you need another 6 to be an extender. Next, moving on to the spells, we play 3 copies of Upstart Goblin. Obviously, you want to get to your combo as quickly as possible. 3 copies of Gishki Aquamere. If you open this card, it's really good. If not, and you have to search it, it's also fine. It has the effect that it can be used to ritual summon any Gishki ritual monster, and you must tribute monsters from your field or hand with levels equal to the level of the monster you're summoning. So in this case, Mine August and Gust Kraken are level 6, so you have to tribute levels that equal exactly 6. And then it also has the effect that you can shuffle it back into the deck from the graveyard and target one of your Gishki ritual monsters in graveyard and add it to your hand. So that allows you to really cycle through your different Gishki monsters, which is very nice, summoning multiple per turn, how I mentioned before, to loop your opponent's hand. 2 copies of Hieratic Seal of Convocation. This is basically your Rhoda for your Hieratic monsters. 2 copies of Salvage. The reason we only play 2 of this is because you can recycle it with Mine August, but in general, this card, if you open Shadow and Vision, you're basically just winning that game, so very, very powerful card. After that, 2 copies of Forbidden Lance to make sure your plays go through, along with 2 copies of MST, because if a deck is playing something like Vanity's Emptiness, you want to be able to out it, or it's kind of just the same thing as Lance. Anyone who's seen my videos knows I like the 2-and-2 ratio in a lot of different decks. After that, we play 1 Preparation of Rites. The reason we only play 1 is because, again, we only have 2 targets in deck for this, being the Mine August and Gust Kraken, but it adds a level 7 or lower ritual monster from deck to hand, and then you can add 1 ritual spell from your graveyard to your hand. So this card is really good late game, but not quite the best early game, especially because you have so many cards that already search your ritual monster, so you don't want to kind of brick on cards that are only your ritual monsters. After that, 1 Soul Charge, because you play enough monsters that Soul Charge can be relevant, especially turn 1 after looping your opponent's hand, and 1 copy of 1-for-1 to summon the Beautiful Princess, as I mentioned before, so that you can get your, plays started without needing your normal summon. So very powerful card there. Moving on to the extra deck, 1 copy of Gaia Dragon to stack on top of your rank 6s. There's a cool play with one of the rank 6s that I will mention briefly in a little bit, but I almost want to play 2 copies of this, but I think the extra deck space is kind of tight in certain aspects. 3 copies of M7. You need to play 3 of this because some of your main combos, especially, like I said, if you open like Vision, Shadow, and a copy of one of the Hieratics, can really just loop a lot of your plays. So it's important to play 3 to put back your resources, or against your opponent, just bounce all of their cards. So very good. 1 copy of Strike Bouncer. It's a negate. Sadly, doesn't destroy, but it also will inflict 1,000 damage, which, if you think about it, is like 1 less summon they can do off of a Soul Charge, as well as it has 2,700 attack, which is very strong. And the last rank 6 I'm playing is Inzektor Exabeetle. This card is actually just insane. What it does is when it's Xyz summoned, you're able to target a monster in either player's graveyard, equip it to this card, it will gain half the attack and defense of that monster. And then you can detach a material to send a face-up card on your field and your opponent's field. So this is really good at outing cards like Dracosack. For example, if your opponent has a Dracosack and they made tokens, what you can do is summon this, equip a card from the graveyard to it, send the equipped card and the Dracosack to grave because it sends, and then you can overlay into Gaia Dragon, attack into a token, and do the piercing damage. So very, very powerful card. It can also out hands and stuff, and it sends, so that's very nice. For some rank 4s, we play 1 Queen Dragon Jin, because it can reborn your hieratic monsters in graveyard to help you keep extending. It is a generic level 4 too, so if you have Beast and another 4, you can just go straight into this. So for example, you know, if you have a Shadow in grave or something, you can go into this. 1 101, 1 Exciton, 1 Lavalval Chain, and 1 Dweller. I also chose to play 1 rank 2, which is Gachi Gachi, simply because there are enough level 2s that it can come up where you need to make something, and getting a small attack boost is kind of nice in this deck, especially since a lot of your monsters already are big. It just makes them larger. And then we also play a couple synchros because, again, Labradorite Dragon is a tuner. 1 copy of Leo because Labradorite plus a 4 can make that, or if you're really desperate, 2 2s and your Labradorite Dragon. Beals because Labradorite Dragon is a dark, so, you know, making this with Labradorite and a 2 is really good, and it's hard to out. And Stardust as a generic level 8 because it's just a good card in a format full of cards that pop cards. Now, going back to what I said at the beginning, if you choose to play more ritual monsters, usually people will play Zealgigas. They'll play like 2 copies of this. And so what this one does is you can pay 1,000 life points, draw a card, reveal it, and if it's a Gishki monster, shuffle 1 card from your field, or from the field, my bad, into the deck, which is really good, non-targeting. It's also 3,200 beater. And so you can play this if you want more targets, and usually when you do that, you will also play in your extra deck things like Hieratic Dragon King of Atum, because at that point, when you go for your hieratic plays and have 2 6s, being your whatever hieratic and a Labradorite, you're able to free special summon cards like Red MD, which can bring back your hieratics in grave, and then you have more tribute material for your other 2 ritual monsters, as well as they will also play stuff like Flamevel Guard, which is another vanilla dragon type monster. So in that case, you're now able to make things like Black Rose Dragon in the extra deck, because 6 plus a level 1 tuner. You can also use the Red MD to summon back the Flamevel Guard and make things like Star Eater. There's just a whole lot of different synergies. You can also play rank 10s, because this is a 10 also, so there are plays where you could like tribute a hieratic and a beast for the ritual spell, summon this, the hieratic will summon, and then you can just kind of combo into things where you end up going and making a rank 6 and a rank 10. There's just a lot of things to mess with. If you guys are interested in specifically a more in-depth build on that, let me know in the comment section, or if there's any videos you want to see in general, let me know in the comment section. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to get notified anytime I put a new video out. Share this video with your friends, and anyways guys, I will see you in the next video.